enlargements from them. And the first picture that we're looking at I don't remember why, but I copied it in a crooked way. I think partly to get the writing that's on the edge of the picture, picture number 1 there. And who would have written that on the edge?
My mother was great for writing on backs of or on any pictures, small or large. And it's a good thing because it certainly helped us in later years. We had a box full of pictures, very few of them in a proper setting, and there were the names, so it's great.
Uh-huh.
But this is a picture of my dad, who was, believe it or not, quite athletic, not like his son. And and it's written on here, McNeece himself, because my mother was always kind of making a joke, especially when she wrote something. She had to add, shall we say, garnish it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's up in a tree like his ancestors, and he looks great. I don't know why he's all dressed up. He even has a cigar, but he's still sitting on the large limb of a tree. But evidently it was Sunday and they went out to the park. Is there anything? Probably Palmer Park, when it was a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Although they did certainly went for Belle Isle in a big way, but that was mostly in the winter for ice skiing.
Palmer Park, so they would have lived where then?
Somewhere not too far away, probably off street or on Woodward Avenue. There are many great apartments in those days, and a lot of people lived there. They also lived over near the seminary. When they built the seminary, it was a beautiful area, and they lived in a house close by there.
Mm-hmm.
West Chicago, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm. And he's dressed, well, somewhat formally. I don't know if that was the fashion of the time, or did he normally dress like that?
Well, yes, why not? Because he had a dress like that for his job. He was always well dressed. I don't remember him not being well dressed, except when he was perhaps working in the yard or in the house or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Always what he called the choker, those high collars they wore.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a professional man, and in those days they expected him to look like it. There was no smocks like they have today to cover you up fully. You had to come in the suit and the tie and the shirt, but the high collar, oh boy. Looking at this, that's the dandy.
And the haircut looks remarkably contemporary.
Yeah, well,
it's shaved on the sides and
for him, anything that would get rid of the hair, cut it short, and so it wouldn't be curly or wavy. He did not like that. I don't know why. It might have had something to do with being the only boy in the family, and the girls had curly hair, and they all looked alike in pictures, and from that day on, he didn't care for it. And he used all kinds of things to straighten it, and it didn't work. So he just cut it off high over his ears, and of course his ears stuck out like they do in the comics.
Yeah, that's comes through, I think, in other pictures too. In fact, that's one thing interesting. Later on we'll see a picture of you, and your ears seem to have that characteristic, but they don't now. But we can talk about that when we get to the picture. There's one particular of you and Maureen standing together on a dock where it looks like your ears are kind of protruding from your head also.
That's true.
His face was skinny then, it's fat now.
Yeah.
That's one answer.
That's certainly probably the truth, yeah. Yeah, that's it. I could give a lot of remarks, but I'm not going to. Just the thoughts of those days when my mother took adhesive tape and pasted them to my head, you know.
You jest now, correct? I mean, this is a joke you're making.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Okay.
Mom, I don't want to sleep on that ear tonight. I slept on that ear. Shall we continue? This is important stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the next picture.
Yeah, number 2 picture shows
Yeah,
3 people. If you could just identify them.
I certainly can. My dad is standing in the background with the inevitable cigarette,
Yeah.
and I am being held by one of my favorite aunts, my Aunt Alice Hammond, who is the sister, or was the sister of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
They're all gone now, of course, and that's a picture of a guy that evidently, the kid looks like he never used a comb or a brush. And as far as that goes, if you ever see this picture, maybe it was a big wind that day. My dad's hair is blowing all over too. This one picture here, it looks like it's fairly long.
Mm-hmm. Who would have taken that picture?
Maybe my Uncle Roe, who was Aunt Al's husband, or could be my mother. I don't know. Possibly my mother.
And the second picture we can pretty well identify because you're in it.
Yes.
And do you have any idea how old you are? Oh, I can tell you. It's written on the picture. You're 17 months old.
My golly.
And also,
I look much older.
it's written, your name's written Billie on the picture.
Yes, that's because they dress me in dresses a lot. This is the truth. There are many pictures of me in a dress, pushing a doll buggy.
So was this a joke, or as far as the spelling, or just something that was a fashion at the time?
Evidently, that was written by somebody else, because my mother never used that, and neither did my father.
Ah.
So he could have been the one who got the picture, and evidently when it came through, they wrote on it.
Mm-hmm. 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 And this might have been taken also in Palmer Park?
Possibly, or even in the backyard.
Hmm. That's interesting. It looks like a rather large backyard.
Yeah, well, in those days, a lot of the houses were not too close together and so on. It's hard to say. And it may be taken at Aunt Al's house. We visited there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They were wonderful people. They lived in Ypsilanti, which was not very far, while my uncle took further schooling. My aunt was also a teacher at Ypsilanti, high school teacher.
Ah.
So that's the reason they lived there.
Mm-hmm. Any idea what she taught?
No, I don't have any idea. Nope. They were both teachers. Both of my father's sisters, Al and Teen, were both teachers. Al stopped after teaching in Ypsilanti to move to another city because of her husband's work, but Christine stayed and taught in Highland Park High School.
Hmm. Picture number 3 is something of a mystery.
Yes, it is.
It's a very, very small photograph when I copied it. kind of makes all the problems with it very large. It's really been kicked around a lot. It looks like it's a very old picture. It's a very stylized, kind of formalized portrait.
Yes, especially the le chapeau. That's the hat.
Yeah. And on the picture is written, Mac, where did you get that hat?
Well, that's probably another little witticism from my mother when she saw it, and that kind of establishes the idea this is a picture of my father when he was very young, maybe 3 or 4 years old. I don't know.
Any idea where she would have gotten this picture from?
Oh, sure. They got quite a bit of memorabilia from my at my father's death. I remember my dad going to Morley, Michigan, where he was born and where they lived, and where my grandfather was a doctor for many, many years. So that's probably where they picked it up.
Morley, Michigan was how far from here?
From Detroit?
Yeah.
Oh, heck, it's not more than 80 miles.
Oh.
Maybe 100 at the most.
Is it near Big Rapids? I forget.
I have no idea.
Well, it's closer than I thought it was. I thought it was much further away. At any rate, it's a small town.
Right.
And,
Very small.
mm.
Yeah. Wonderful little town. I believe it was the county seat, because I remember when we went to get data, when we decided to check on the graves of the old folks, were buried, my grandmother and grandfather. He was quite a guy, had quite a monument in the cemetery.
Probably should take a trip there sometime.
Yeah,
That would be interesting.
it was interesting trying to find it, wasn't it, Maria?
Yes,
Oh,
we
we-
walked all around
And
that place.
I'm sure you remember
I
that.
remember, I was
Yeah.
very tired.
We finally found it and then took some pictures.
All they could produce at the county seat or the office there was, yes, he definitely is buried there, but
We don't know.
we don't really know. But once we did find it, there was nothing to it. It was large enough. Oh, it
Yes.
wasn't a statue or a base of it, but it was a big monumental type
Yeah,
thing.
there's like a big star.
It was probably 4 to 5 feet high, don't you think?
I remember seeing the name McNeece on it, and it was an eerie feeling.
Yes. All right. I'm sure everybody gets a feeling like that when they see monuments or markers like that, and
Knowing that
knowing how far
family
back.
members involved.
Right.
far
And
back
somebody
it
that I
was.
didn't even know at that time my name. I would have liked to have met the man.
Yeah, he just worked himself to death. He died very young too.
That would be your grandfather?
Mhm.
Do you have any idea of the age?
I don't think he was much over 50. Between 45 and 50, something like that.
I heard one story once where he suffered an accident.
Yes. Yeah, it was a storm, and of course, doctors in those days, they it didn't mean anything. When they got a hold of the doctor by telephone, by going someplace to another house that had a telephone, you know how things were then. And he got in the buggy. He always never rode horseback because of carrying paraphernalia related to his job. And the horse shied at a bolt of lightning, I presume. They said it was, but could have been a tree waving or anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the buggy tipped over, and he never really recovered from
Any idea as to the nature of the injuries at all?
None at all.
Details?
that. None at all. He wasn't incapacitated, but in those days they didn't have the knowledge about bones and muscles and things like they do today.
And then, would your father have already been through school? Where did he go to school anyway?
You what, high school, college, or?
Whatever information.
I think most of the time they had a good college of pharmacy in a place in Big Rapids. The name of it escapes me. You remember Ferris Institute, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's become, I guess, quite a college now. Or maybe it's a university, I don't know. But anyway, that was the place to go, so. His
So-
dad wanted him to be a doctor, but he evidently didn't want to be. So maybe he assisted too many times, and it didn't work out for him. Yeah, he,
Well, do you recall what year your mother and father were married? Do you have any knowledge of that?
1918.
Okay.
So it was somewhere around 1916 or 17, probably, when he came. But evidently, he worked on, she lived on Richton Avenue, and he worked, his first job as a pharmacist was on the corner of Richton and Woodward. And they just lived 2 doors down from there. And of course, they got to know him as the pharmacist after a while. And he got to know the girls, and there was 3 of them. So,
Okay, that would be. Why don't you get the names? Why don't you get the names?
well, I should have said 4, but somehow one of them wasn't around the house much, so she was the first to go out to work. That was Clara. Clara, Jeanette, Ann, and Mary, my mother.
And was your mother the youngest of the sisters?
No, she was the second oldest.
Oh.
Yeah, better name them in order of age,
Well.
the oldest first.
I won't do that.
Oh,
Oh, no.
okay,
Mm-mm.
okay.
I already named them.
Um.
I don't know what that had to do with it at all. Oh, yes. One skinny person and one chubby one. Myself and my sister Maureen, standing on the end of a dock. Gee, I can see why we both grew up to be tall, and I never noticed that before. Or at least fairly tall. Both got big feet.
Yeah, it does come.
We've
through.
got those, we call them tennis shoes then. Because I guess that's who started it or something, but we both have tennis shoes on. They're big.
And so you would be. How old would you guess in that picture? Looks like at least an early teenager type person.
That I couldn't tell you. I haven't studied this, and I should have, I suppose. I haven't got any idea.
Well, how many years? We could probably guess. How many years separate you and Maureen?
5.
5. And she looks like she's what, 9 or 10 in that picture?
No,
No.
far from it.
No.
No.
8.
7 or 8. Yeah.
So then you would be 12 or 13 then probably. Yeah. Early,
It's like
very
a
early.
12-year-old.
Yeah, I look like about 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
You don't recall where it was.
I have
It's possible.
It says Maureen and Bill McNeece at Sugar Loaf Lake.
That's exactly right. And we used to go there quite often. What was that?
That was the water running.
Water's running in the bathroom.
Oh, I thought somebody. Oh, okay.
So, where is Sugarloaf Lake located?
In the land of lakes, Michigan, not too far from Detroit. There's a whole bunch of lakes, beginning with Wall Lake and moving north and northwest. There's even some in the east.
Mm-hmm.
And we were never too far away from the lake. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we always spent our vacation at a cottage, because at that time they were very inexpensive and it was wonderful.
So you would rent that a cottage.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you return often to this particular location, or was this like just one summer?
Yes, we got to know the people that owned it, and they all, I guess, gave us a good deal, as you could say. And we liked it so well because my mother made friends with a lady who I had a small farm adjacent to the lake, and they became good friends. And that was a big advantage to us as children, because definitely riding horses and finding out about what is happening on farms and all that, it was just great. Somewhere there are some pictures of Maureen and I riding on this horse, which was the most gentle thing that was ever born as far as horses go. You know, it was great for little kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother and dad were a little bit nervous at first, especially my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great there.
Mm-hmm. And would your father be there at this time?
No, he would be there for not more than 3 or 4 days at a time, and then on weekends, if we were lucky enough to get the place for 3 weeks. And he would, in that time, he would have 3 or 4 days straight, like maybe Saturday and Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, maybe a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was, there was no doubt about it, the guy was an athlete. And he was a great swimmer, and nothing would stop him because of there was places to swim around the lake, but it didn't bother him. The weeds and all the growth that came up through the water, you know, the water would be deep, but if it was off the end of the dock, he would dive off the end of the dock and go out where it was right through everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good swimmer, real good.
Would he drive out? Or how would he get out there?
Yes, he drove. And he'd drive back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you would be there for quite a long time then?
At times. It started slowly. It was a week, I believe, at first, and then when we keep going for 2 weeks, and I think once for 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess one question, would Diana have been around at this time? How much younger was she than Maureen?
No, because I was 12 years old when she was born.
Okay, so she'd be born just around the time this
So,
picture was
yeah.
taken then.
This probably could have been one of the last times we were there.
Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, because you didn't go there after?
No. That was it. Yeah, that kind of coincides with our ages and the time.
The accident with your father?
No, that was later.
That was later?
Yeah, that was after Diane was born.
Mm-hmm.
Diane was just a tiny baby when he was killed.
Any other stories you can think of and related to going there during the
No,
summer?
just good memories as a kid.
We should comment too, the person making all the background noise and supplying so much mirth, and who's now drooling.
He's smiling at us. He's doing a good job.
Yes, it's Geo. Now, where does the Geo come from? Anyway,
Jeffrey.
What's the
three
first three letters of
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey?
well, I know, but I wondered if there's any other kind of connection there.
Well, he was born the same day the Japs brought the car over.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Geo.
A Japanese. Pardon me.
We could edit that out, Dad.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay, then the next picture, a picture of 3 young women.
Oh yes. Good looking too. Only, may I say, you are remiss upon that statement. That's 2 young women and a young boy.
Oh, aha. Okay, we better clarify that. Let's see, number 34 here. 34, wait a second, what am I doing here? 34, 35, 36. Okay, Teen Alice and Alexander McNeece.
Right. Oh, he does look like a girl.
Long hair.
Yeah, he's got long hair and he changed a lot. But the most amazing thing about this picture, the 3 of them together, is the eyes. Are the eyes. Are the eyes. They're all alike.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just amazing.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed when I did the enlargement, the way the eyes were. And also I should mention too, that someone has gone with a pencil over this picture and colored eyebrows in with the pencil.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see that.
We may have done some other touch-up work on it too. It looks like homemade, not a professional studio type job, but someone has
Also
gone
on
after it.
Alexander, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
My goodness, no wonder they all have such a resemblance.
Probably because the picture is so washed out. There's hardly
Yeah.
any highlight detail at all, and whoever did that might have tried to bring back some detail that, for whatever reason, has gone away.
They all have curly hair, and in those days, I don't think they went in too much for. They didn't have time for that curl hair. There's too much to do.
So that's your father and 2
Yes.
sisters.
Alexander, Christine, and Alice.
Mhm.
They look very much alike. Both very beautiful and absolutely not twins, but they are good looking and turned out to be great looking women. But Teen never did gain the stature that Al did. Alice was, as I said, 5'5" or 6, and Teen never got much over 5 feet. And Teen was an appropriate name because she really was teeny. In fact, her husband used to call her that just for fun. She was very small. And she had a little teeny bulldog that she was in love for years and years. Because I used to visit there at Teen and Walt's home often. Wonderful people. And the same with Al and her husband. Monroe, Charles Monroe.
Okay, we're on picture number 6. And
Yeah, it is 6.
let's see. It has written on it Alice McNeece and Alma Grant, the 2 Jumbo Boys, Morley, Michigan. That's what that had written on it.
Well, I will have to agree because I don't know any better. I certainly know it's Alice, Aunt Alice. And they certainly do look like they're enjoying their theatricals. But as far as the other girl, I am not sure.
At any rate, then Alma Grant then would have been a friend, if that is
Yes,
Alma Grant, would have been a friend.
Definitely, yeah,
And they're dressed up because they are participating in a play.
correct. That is exactly right. Okay, this number 7 is a famous picture. The reason I say it's famous because it, I was going to say it attracted a lot of men. But it actually did. She was a very beautiful girl.
And
Her
who?
name is Anne Brome, and she is one of the Brome girls, of which my mother was one. My mother was Mary, and then we had Jeanette, Clara. And Anne was the youngest and was watched over very closely, and was probably given almost anything that she wanted. But she was exceptionally nice. She was just about the nicest person I've ever met. But had the world by a short string, and definitely was having a great time, and with many suitors. And she finally got engaged to one man, and she got the dread disease, and she died at the age of 30.
So she died at about age 30
Yes,
from what may have been diabetes.
correct. At that time, it was incurable. The only thing I remember was the wonderful man that she was engaged to. He really was. Because she had her pick. She really was quite a gal. I mean, she was just very nice, that's all, and good looking too. And her sisters thought she was the greatest, and so did a lot of other people. But she finally found this guy by the name of Frank Kimberly, and he was a peach of a guy. And well, when she died, they were engaged, and he just about died too. It was like Romeo and Juliet. It was amazing. That's all I remember about it, because it was it tore the family all up, and everybody had one of Anne. She had, this was the formal picture, and she was one of the first to have a from that family that I know of from both sides that had a picture that was colored.
Wow.
And it was in full living color, and this is a shot from the old film, I suppose. Black and white, and then they evidently got that when they had the formal picture. But she was the only one of the girls that I know of that had one like that, and had it in the same house. She evidently got it for Frank Kimberly, her sweetheart. And they really were. It was a very sad story. Because as an aside, it isn't very pleasant, but it was true. It was just like a story. My Uncle Bill, who's the oldest in the family, always watched over most everybody, because that's the way he was. He was hit pretty hard by Anne's death, too. And one evening after work, it was raining and he was feeling really bad. And, he went out to visit the grave. It was maybe a week or two after. And makes me feel bad too. There was Frank kneeling on the grave in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
It tore everybody up. He told the story. And it hurt everybody, so we all loved very much. Sorry about that, but I recall it so much easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like yesterday. Tragedy. But, years later, grew up and Frank still remained friends with the family. And he's the only one that, at that time, I didn't have a father, and he used to come and take me to hockey games and baseball games.
Really? That's quite remarkable.
That's why it, kind of hit me.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy.
Did he ever marry?
Never married. Oh well.
Well, do you want to go on to the next picture, or do you want to take a break?
Well, no, I don't need to take a break. Still talking about Anne. I could tell kind of a rather comedy affair, which could have been a tragedy. Frank Kimberly was one of the few that had a car. And he was working, and my mother and my Aunt Jeanette and Ann, who had a few lessons driving his Ford, which, if you remember, well, you don't remember, but Fords at that time didn't have any gear shift. They had 3 pedals. A brake, a clutch, and a special pedal for shifting in the center. And we were going to take a ride on the steamer and go way over to Canada and back on the ferry. Well, as everybody knows, when you go down to a river, you usually go down a hill. And you're supposed to stop before you get to the dock, because in those days they had a little thin chain. And she's going down the hill, and she's brand new with handling the car, and she suddenly looks up and sees she's gaining speed, and it's time to put the brakes on. And we all start telling her it's time to put the brakes on. We ended up just about 1 foot from the chain. And she never drove again, as far as I know. Never did.
That must have
Frank met us, we waited for him, and I think that was, as far as I know, she never did.
And your mother was being taught by her too? Is that what you?
No, my mother was with us.
Oh, I mean, yeah. And did Frank ever try to teach her
No.
how to drive? No, it's just because she never drove, to my knowledge.
No, she never did. Ann was the only one outside of the boys. Bob and Bill. Bob was a great driver and always had a car, and Bill was a poor driver but had all the brains.
This would be
Yeah.
Uncle Bill.
Uncle Bill and Uncle Bob. Yeah.
Uncle Bill Brome, though.
Yeah, Ann's brother.
Okay. Picture 8 is.
That's my Aunt Alice. Another Wonder Woman. First of all, she was, up until just a few years ago, alive and still going strong. She died about, I don't know, 92 or 93, I don't remember. But she was one of the great ladies. She took a man who had intelligence and didn't really know what to do with it, and made a millionaire out of him. He was a printer. She had a good education. He had a high school education. She was a teacher, a graduate teacher, and when she met him and they fell in love, he was a handsome fellow and she was beautiful too, but she got him into the automobile business, which was just beginning then. And when they ended up, they had 2 Cadillac dealerships and a beautiful home in Indianapolis, which I visited now and then.
Now, she lived in Florida in her last years?
In her last year, she did, yes. They took their money and bought a beautiful home on one of the channels and had a boat and lived the life of Riley. What he died of, I don't know. But he didn't die too young. I think he was probably in his early 60s when he died.
And she lived till 92.
Yeah, as far as I can determine.
When was the last time you visited her? Do you know, do you recall?
No, I don't. Not the precise year. It was at least 10 years ago. Well, that was about the first time we went down to Florida, wasn't it? Or was it the second time?
No, because we saw her more than once in Florida,
Oh, okay.
and
Well, I'm not dragging all this. I'm not
Right.
dragging any
Right.
of this out,
right.
at all. I just.
This is the same person that was holding you in the picture with your dad when you're 17 months old then?
Same person.
Right.
Okay, I'm starting to make connections then, all right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, fine.
And I'm sure, put the picture side by side, you'd know right away. Because the wavy hair and the big brown eyes and the semi-prominent nose.
Okay, great. Then we can go to number 8?
Number 9.
Number 9?
Yeah, that's on the back here somewhere. Is that correct?
Okay.
That's Christine. That's one of my dad's sisters, and Alice, of course, the other one. She was the youngest sister, but not the youngest in the family. My dad was the youngest. And she is a very wonderful person. Spent a lot of time at her house. She lived in Adrian. Her husband was in the oil business, Kendall Oil, as a matter of fact. I remember that real well. And what a peach of a guy. That guy was terrific.
Weren't there
And I
any
never had
slimes in the
any-
family? All these people are really nice.
No,
No, that's good. That's good.
there really wasn't. No mean people at all that I know
So,
of. There's.
I was waiting for you to say I'm the only one.
Well, I haven't been in jail more than once, so I'm really not too bad. And that was because I didn't pay a speeding ticket. Well, I didn't have the money.
I see. How old were you when this nefarious occurrence?
I don't know. 16, 17, maybe.
Before I knew him.
Yeah. Well, it was during the Depression, if you want the short story on it. It was simple. Most everybody did the same thing. You didn't have the money, and you certainly didn't want to do like a lot of them did. If you didn't have any money, siphon gas out of somebody else's tank, because that guy didn't have any money either. But if you didn't have any money, you didn't have any to pay a ticket. So you accepted the ticket in all good grace, and what you did was when your court date came, you went down to court, and you went before the judge or whoever was handling the traffic tickets at that time, and you stood before him and pleaded guilty or not guilty, and he would give you the sentence. And it would be like, oh, if I remember correctly, I think it was $2 or something for the ticket. And it might have been 5 if you were going very fast, but I didn't have a car that went very fast anyway. But anyway, the the judge would say, "Are you able to pay this ticket?" And whoever was in front of him would say no. And I did the same. I said, "No, I don't have the money." And I was dressed in my most disheveled clothes, which were the only ones I had anyway. I was lucky to have the 6 cents to take the streetcar. Not the 6 cents brainily, but the 6 cents that it cost to take the streetcar downtown to go before the judge. And anyway, he said, "Okay, you shall be incarcerated if you do not have the money." So, the way it worked at that time, everybody that was unable to pay was taken out into a room and kept there until the court proceedings were over with everybody that was in that particular area for the reason that I was, traffic violations. And they took us all out one by one, and when the court was cleared, all those that were convicted were put into the little truck with the closed panels, and off you went. What they did when I was there was evidently what they did all the time, and that was drive around the block, right back to the same building, get on another elevator, go up to a room that had bars on it, put us in the room, and this, by the time, for instance, court was over by 2 o'clock, and you were in there, if you wanted to, shooting dice, playing games, and telling stories until 4 o'clock. Then they let everybody go. They didn't have enough money to feed you. So that was my one and only time. But of course, I would kid you not, I wasn't scared to death, but I was very uneasy. I was afraid. I didn't like it. It was my first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
So,
Well,
how did we get into that?
I have forgotten.
I don't know, but it was fun.
Yeah, that was
It's a
fun.
good story.
Yeah.
They were all, everybody, all the men in your family, well,
Oh,
like
that's
women
right.
too, were terrific people,
That's how we got
except
into
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You didn't record that.
yes, but that's quite all right. That's quite all right.
That's kind of silly. This pertains to pictures.
I know, but it was relevant.
And it just, it's Tom Sawyerish and stuff like that. Stuff that went on when you were a kid. You never write about that junk. There's too much went on.
That's what everybody wants to know about, though.
That's right.
Right.
Everybody wants to.
Well, I fell out of a few
The
trees.
truth.
I was always climbing trees, and I got pictures that prove that. But the rest of it, well, there's some interesting stories with girls. But
Oh yeah, we'd like to hear those.
Oh, I would too.
oh boy, I got a couple of dandies, and then nothing what you three are thinking. These are just fun,
Oh.
except for me.
Well,
I didn't count him. I should have said 4, but I don't think he's paying
No,
attention.
he's not paying attention.
Well, I think
I'm gonna make a
Like the
note
last story.
of that,
Did you?
so we can go through these pictures. We'll come back to the stories of the
Take a break?
young women.
Oh, no, I wouldn't go into that. No. No, that wouldn't be
Oh,
funny
darn.
to you because it's of a different age, a different era. It would be bunk to you.
We'll be the judges
Yes.
of the bunk. But at any rate,
It would be good to
Oh,
get
speaking
through that.
of bunks, we had a bunk. Did you ever see St. Cecilia's Church on Livernois?
no,
You never did.
no.
It was big. It was a gigantic church. And the original church was big too. And we had a bunk in a tree that was way up over the roof of that. And we lived there for a couple of summers. We were there almost all the time.
The whole family.
Yeah! Yeah, I didn't give a prelude on that at all, did I? Yeah, it did sound like that.
Right.
Yeah, no, it was three guys and I. Boy, we had the greatest time on that. Why we didn't get killed, I don't have any idea. Nobody ever got hurt. Anyway, where was I?
Well, we're
Well,
talking,
what do you want to do, boss?
well, we're talking about
This is-
Christine here, and,
Yeah.
and we kind of interrupted ourselves when we were talking about her husband who was in the oil business.
Yes, he was a super salesman. He dealt dealt with the factory, and he had a very good job. And he also was a very successful man because I lived in his house and I lived in his neighborhood, and it was the first house I ever knew that had a drive-in garage underneath the house.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was really something. It was they had so much property, it was on an angle, and you drove right into the basement, plenty of room, got out of the car and you were in the basement, walked up the steps and you were in the house. Completely taken care of as far as the weather or anything else.
So why did you spend time at that house?
For the strange reason is they had, well, I'd say the first reason was they had no children. The second reason was they liked me. And, well, I was better than nothing. I mean, you had to put me above a dog. They had the cutest little bulldog you ever saw named Pug. And we had a wonderful time. I'd spend a couple of weeks there, 3 or 4 summers. So, luckily for my family, spending time with the relatives, they didn't see much of me during the summer. Because, you know, with 2 other children, or only one. That's right. Because that was long before my dad was killed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was wonderful memories with Auntie. I loved her very much too.
Mm-hmm. And I just made another connection here, which is obvious, but I'll state it. Christine was teen, and teen coming from Christine,
That's right.
or from teeny or small, because I think you mentioned that earlier too.
No, that's what they used to kid her with. They always called her Teen. And then when she never grew any bigger, they called her, just for fun, they'd say, "You teeny," you know, just
Mhm.
like for the fun.
Right.
But Teen was her name,
Mm-hmm.
definitely,
Mm-hmm.
from Christine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good.
And you're named after quite a gal. Smart. Oh, geez.
Mm-hmm. Then, the next picture
Oh, next picture.
is
The next 2 pictures are of my grandmother. Grandmother Brome, grandmother Clara Brome. And I can only guess at the age of these particular, the age she was at these pictures. She was a very old lady when she died, and in these pictures, she always seemed old to me because, and the reason was, I didn't get to know her till I was maybe 5 or 6, and she lived in her own home, and we'd visit, you know, back and forth. But as far as getting to know her real well, there was too many in the family. Well, she was the patriarch. She was, you know, the big shot. She was very nice. And as a matter of fact, one time, one summer, I spent quite a bit of time with her, because we didn't live too far away. She lived on Dexter, and we lived on Stopel, and it wasn't too far. The main thing is, she was the one that really started me to read. I can remember it to this day. And she started with the front of the paper, the Detroit News. And that's what I learned to read first.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how old I was. I was probably 14 or 15.
Well, we assume this is one of your earlier memories that you're
Yes,
speaking
it
of
was.
now.
She was a wonderful woman. Wonderful woman. And took a terrible beating and never made a noise. Just kept right on working. Just shoved the girls aside and said, I'll get the dinner, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And she made the most wonderful applesauce. Boy, she was always making applesauce, and it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go over there, she'd always have that. We knew we'd get something. Maureen would be, she really, I think that's how she got so chubby. Get over there. 'Cause
Yeah.
I should say too that one of those pictures, the one with her in the boat in the water,
it was much younger than the other one. Yeah.
and has on that picture was written 1926.
And you can see how old she looked, even in 1926.
And this lake, where would it have been?
This I do not know. It looks like one that either Bob or Bill rented, and we went out to visit. Because it seems ridiculous, but obviously that was the big thing. Going to the parks, there was no problems in the parks, and going to the lake, which was 30 miles away, you know, right out Woodward Avenue, no traffic, nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many lakes, and so many places you could get and rent so cheaply in those days. It was, and they were so happy to have you. It was unbelievable. They'd do anything for you, and to come back, you were in. So, if one member of the family didn't rent a cottage for at least a couple of weeks, another did, and that's the way it worked. It worked out so that you visited, you had some sort of a vacation all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you want to call a vacation with 3 or 4 or 5 kids, you know, everybody had children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that would help, though. You would then have built-in companions.
Yeah.
Occupied.
Yeah. But that was the funny part of it. It was generally separate, and I don't know why to this day. In other words, it was seldom. It would probably had to do with the amount of space. And in other words, our family, with the exception of my dad, who always had to work, it just wouldn't be big enough to hold the 2 of us, 3 with my mother, and then other families that those guys were small, inadequate, had no, no facilities at all. You did your own pumping for any water. That's the way it was, and that was it. And it was an outhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was primitive, but it was fun. It was great.
And her, well, on the other picture there, it says Mother Clara
Mhm.
Dixon Brome.
Right.
And,
She was a Dixon.
mhm. Okay.
Her name was Clara.
And, I guess because, again, I'm somewhat confused, her husband was who? Who was she married to?
She was married to William Brome.
Oh, yeah?
That can be confusing. Her
Yes.
son's name, one of her son's name was William also.
Ah, and the William Brome that I knew would be her
Her
son.
son.
Her son, that was my uncle, and he was William E. Brome, her son. And this grandfather of mine was named, he had a strange name. I don't even remember it now. Well, Uncle Bill had a strange name too. He never used it. He just used the initial. Ewart.
Ewart.
Yeah, E-W-U-A-R-T. Ewart. But that, I can get some asides in here that have nothing to do with my grandmother, except that she might have had something to do with naming some of these people. Now, this one has got to stagger you. My mother's name was Mary Senetius Brome.
Senetius.
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 Now, isn't that a beauty?
I dare you to spell that.
I could no more spell it than I could Yugoslavia.
That's a pretty name, actually.
Senetius.
Oh, come on,
You don't
gal.
like that
Where
name?
You
does-
got to be kidding.
Where's the Mary Agnes come in then? Come
Well,
Confirmation.
that is the name, right. That is the name she took and never even remembered she was Senetius.
See, now, I think Agnes is a much worse name than Senetius.
Well, I guess
Don't you?
I can't recall the other children, but that had something to do with Clara Brome and her husband William. It had something to do with it, because they all had strange middle names. Now Tiberius, that's not
Oh,
Tiberius?
you're kidding.
Robert T. Brome.
He's not kidding.
Robert. Who would be Robert? That was.
That was Big Bob, the biggest one in the family. Yeah, the laughing good time Bob, the one that was the general manager of Checker Cab. for all
Okay,
those years.
and we're going to talk about him in just a moment.
Yeah,
Okay, and his T. Tiberius, really, that's quite amazing.
Ewart, Senetius, Tiberius, and I don't know what else. Ann's middle initial, and the sister was L. The Lord knows what it was.
'Cause she never used it, eh?
And Jeanette, I knew Jeanette. Jeanette, she was the only one that had two normal good names. And she was tacked on with the two normal good names, plus her regular name, which was the first one, Jeanette. Jeanette Margaret Mary Brome. How that happened,
So,
I don't know.
so you don't know if there was a Tiberius in the family somewhere that they named after. It was a strange hoax, a cruel sense of humor, or you have no idea where these particular names came from then?
I thought this
I
might
can't
have
reach it.
his, it's very dried out.
Okay, I'm very careful with this.
This was Clara Dixon Brome's husband
Oh,
when they lived in Eganville.
I see. They're very good. Thank you very much. This is in relation to my grandmother because this is the man she married.
That's right.
And they were very well to do in a lousy way. They owned a hotel. Yeah.
On the back of this picture here.
This is very tender.
Yes, it is.
Is this, is your machine still going?
Yes, it is.
Can you pick that up?
Mm-hmm. Good. Let me pan over here. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite an heirloom.
Hey, do you want a picture of him along with that?
Oh, you do have a picture of him. Okay.
On the back of that picture, it says he died at about age 43.
Yeah, he died even younger than my other grandfather.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good. I got it.
Okay, thanks very much, Marion. That is really good.
They just didn't have anything to cure diseases that killed everybody.
Oh,
I mean, these
they
people-
died like flies.
I mean, none of these people live very long.
No.
Actually, you might be carrying it too far. The companion picture with this of her at the same age. Do you want that on there too?
This Clara Brome
Yeah.
as a young age.
Yeah, I'll get that when I get these. I'll put that on the end of this tape.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
Okay, I'll bring it on. So.
Yeah. No, because
Yeah,
then I can
that was
double
very,
over it.
very smart and quick. Thanks a lot, Marion. That's really.
Well,
Well, it's just
it
going to
was
fit in
that
beautifully.
middle name coming up, and I
Yeah.
thought maybe
What,
it was on
Sinaceous?
that. Right.
Yes, it's very strange, but
You know, recall does recall,
Mhm.
if you know what I mean. You recall a lot of things and it coincides with other things that you suddenly think of that you never perhaps hadn't even thought of for years.
that's right. Okay. Then why don't we do the last? Are those the last two pictures of the same person?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. Then we can do them as
One
a group.
as a group.
Yeah, as the two of them. They're
Okay.
one in the car and one with the horse.
Yeah.
And you could identify who that is. I think you already have though. That's
Yeah.
Uncle Bob.
hmm Okay, the first one is when he was younger. And, oh, I don't hold these up.
You don't have to.
No,
You can if you want to.
do
But
that. That's silly. The first one is when he joined the army and World War I. He enjoyed it very much. He was very outspoken and happy fellow, and everybody liked him. And before he even went overseas, he became a sergeant. And he had his own little group of men. And only one story about him as far as when he was in the army, those that, perhaps it was the same, I'm pretty sure it was the same, the group that left the Detroit area had already been down south in training, but everybody seemed to regroup in the particular area or city where they started from. So, when Bob came back as a sergeant and was ready to embark on the train to go to Europe to fight, being a sergeant, he had his men. And he also, they had horses, not with them of course, but that type. He wasn't really in the infantry and he wasn't in the cavalry. I don't know exactly what he was, and he never did say, but he had pictures of himself both ways, as with a horse and so on. But he did have a riding crop, and that's what the story was all about. Because some of the men in his group he was sergeant over these men were a group of all different types of people that had come over to the country recently and were citizens. But he made everybody that was crying that went down to see him off at the train started to laugh because this guy was the type he was. He just danced around laughing and saying, okay, you guys, just stay where you are and stay looking good. And he tap him on the legs with the riding crops. Now get back there, Come on, Giuseppe, yeah, I remember, and you, hey, Isidore. And he got the people, those that were crying and sad were happy about it. That's the kind of guy he was.
He's the kind of guy that
And he remained.
was full of life and made
Yeah.
everybody else feel good around him all the
Yeah.
time. And he was a large fellow, you said before?
Yes, he was the biggest in the family, 6'1", and always weighed about 190. Always kept in good shape.
You wouldn't know he and Bill Brum were brothers.
No, he wouldn't.
They were so different.
Not only different physically, in the way they thought and their personalities, it was amazing.
The car, what kind of car is that? And what year model? Do you
I
know?
don't really know, but he did like Hupmobiles.
Aha.
And looking at this picture, it's just amazing. It was evidently wintertime, but he didn't care. He's sitting in an open car. However, the engine is completely covered by a hood, as engines are, but he put a blanket on the hood to keep it warm. And he also has a semi-blanket on the front to help. I'm sure it didn't do the heater much good if they had a heater in those days, and I don't think they did. But evidently they had to keep the engine warm, because he knew all about cars, loved cars, and was even in the car business once.
Wow.
But then so was my dad. Speaking of cars, it just reminded me of one instance in our lives where things got really bad, and my dad was cut down from 7 days a week to 4 days a week working as a pharmacist, because it just wasn't. It was depression time, and that's the way. And he had a friend in the that sold Studebakers, which was a real great car at one time, and of course it's long gone now. So of course he, when he got a job with him as a salesman, he brought the car home, and we all had to go for a ride. And then he said, I'm rehearsing my speech. And the speech was something that I never forgot. I forgot what the car looked like, but I sure remember that. And I just thought of it now when you mentioned something about cars.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a bad one for that time. It was, from the speedway comes their stamina, and from the skyway comes their style, which wasn't too bad. And they were just a little on the upside as being more modern, not so square.
Mm-hmm.
And that year, I don't quite remember. I think it was probably 32, 33, when things were just beautiful.
Yeah, that would have been the depths of the Depression,
Yep.
wouldn't it have been?
It was really bad.
Where he worked, you said he was cut back to 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so where exactly did he work, or what company did he work for?
At that time, he had left Kinsel's, he was the manager of Kinsel's, and it's a very long story. But Mr. Kinsel himself, who liked Mac, that's my dad, real well, died, and his wife took over, and she was somewhat of a odoriferous type woman. She was a stinker, and nobody knew it, but evidently she had had a boyfriend for quite a while, who was also from one of the Kinsel stores, and guess who became manager?
Mm-hmm.
So things got pretty bad. He went to Cunningham's drugstore and started to work there, but he could only work there 4 days a week. So he decided this gentleman that he knew said, well, it won't cost you anything, try selling cars. But I don't believe he was very successful. I don't remember having a new car or anything. But that was just one of the instances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another question that I had, and I don't know if this has been covered or not, and talking about Bob, was he married?
Yes.
And do you know if we've talked about this yet?
No, you never have, because it's not a very happy thing.
Oh.
He was a very happy-go-lucky fellow. And he married a lady who was, I thought, very nice. In less than 3 years, she put on 40 pounds, but we never know the reason for that. One thing that made him unhappy was they couldn't have children. And, well, things went from bad to worse, and they decided perhaps to hold the marriage together it would be wise to adopt a child, and they adopted two, a girl and a boy. And even then, that was during the Depression, he was cut back. He was still making pretty good money. But she decided to she went into the nut business. Peanuts, pecans, walnuts, everything. And how well I remember it, because the basement was full of nuts. And at that time, the way they had them was in bushel baskets, of all things. The old, you two kids are too young to remember, but the old bushel baskets were made out of wood, bent wood,
Mm-hmm.
and very strong, and had two metal handles on it. And the whole basement was full of them. And it went down the drain. And one thing led to another, and they parted.
Mm-hmm. So he never remarried?
No, he never remarried. Let's see. I would probably change that, but our family didn't recognize the marriage. But he really
Oh, I see.
But he really legally did have a second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But the family practically disowned him.
Did he have any children from the second marriage?
No, he did not. That was very late in life.
Mm-hmm. Remember the names of the children he adopted?
No, not at all. It's a blank.
And let's see, Bill Brome, he didn't have any children?
No, he had none. And he did not adopt any.
Mm-hmm. And who else are the rest of the cast of characters?
Well, there was
Jeanette never married.
Jeanette never married, and Clara married and had 2 children. But that was the strange thing. That's another story. I don't know anything about that story, and I don't even know how it happened. But I was aware of it. The Webbers, which Clara married a man by the name of Clarence Weber, who worked for Detroit Edison. We seldom saw them much. There was a kind of the sisters and brothers, and they all went together and had times and parties and everything, but they never seemed to show up. They lived a kind of a different life. He did pretty well, and they married. They went out to St. Mary's Parish, which was really the big thing out in Greenfield, Grand River, out in that area.
St. Mary's at Redford?
Mm-hmm.
And we saw very little of them. But
So, do you recall the names of their children?
only one, Janet, the girl, very nice girl. And I don't even remember. Jerry, I believe.
Yeah,
Gerald,
Jerry.
I think. I'm not too sure.
He was the younger one.
I'm drink. This is not real beer. I'm off of it. This is lousy, but it's
Who
not
was
alcoholic.
the Detroit Edison, Jerry?
Yes.
Bobby, that's the oldest one.
No wonder he disappeared.
Right.
He took off.
So there were 3 children.
They were there. That's right. There was 3, but one of them, well, he left home early. Never was heard from. Practically.
And their last name again was what?
Weber.
Weber. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's right. Bobby started hanging out at the Detroit City Airport, and first thing you know, he was gone. There must have been more to it than that, but there was something wrong, and I never went into it, and nobody let me in on it, and I really didn't care too much.
You never really got to know
Never got to know him real well.
Mm-hmm.
them. Janet died several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is Clara Dixon Brown.
And a younger version.
I'll say.
Oh, definitely. While her husband was still alive, and he died around the age of 43.
Yeah, he died young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as you know, they owned the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And those are colorized pictures, and where did you get those pictures?
I have no idea. I'm sure that my mother had them in her.
Or Jeanette.
In her, my mother had a lot of things that we never even saw before.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right. There are
so
still
did
Diane.
Diane and Jeanette, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think if Diane had them, she'd have them.
Mm-hmm.
I have them, so it must have been when I cleared out Jeanette's house when she died,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or apartment, I
I
should
think
say.
so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other?
Any
No,
little thing you
I
wanted to
think you
add?
did a marvelous job. I didn't expect to be actually interviewed, or I might have been very nervous. And I wouldn't have been, drinking this, because who knows, this might be the real stuff.
No, we know it isn't.
No.
We know it isn't.
It just came
It
out.
says non-alcoholic brew.
O'Dowell's?
O'Doul's.
O'Doul's?
O'Doul's.
D-O-U-L.
I thought you were part Irish.
O'Doul's.
Yeah.
Well,
It's even in the green bottle.
that's right. So is it any good?
No,
He just bought it, he's just trying it.
yeah. Very poor stuff.
Very nicely.
Well, thanks to him, I
Considering.
wouldn't know what to say unless he asked
Oh,
me.
but that's part of his job, right, when he does something like this.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that.
Dress rehearsal or anything.
Yes, there was. I shaved and changed my shirt. That's dress rehearsal.
So I think you should have left on that one undershirt